Today we're going to talk about the element of art, space. After you've added your definition, underneath the title of the element, space, you want to create a square with a pencil. So I have this thickness in green. You can do whatever color you want. Try to make the square about the same size as mine. After you draw your line, hold your finger there so it straightens out. So you should have a little bit of space on either side, and we'll need that in a little bit. So the first type of space we're going to talk about is positive and negative space. All right, so I've just labeled this section positive and negative space. So I'm going to take my pencil back out. I'm going to get my biggest tool there and just fill in this entire, I would say square, but it's more of a rectangle. I'm going to take my eraser and kind of clean up some of these edges here. All right, so what we've got here is just a fully colored in square, and I'm going to take my eraser, make sure that it's on partial, not whole eraser, but partial eraser, and I'm going to choose some thickness. We'll kind of experiment with that, and we're going to kind of erase away or carve away a shape. So instead of leaving it as a thin line, I'm going to kind of thicken up those lines. Make my eraser a little bit bigger so I can erase away the center of it here. So what I've created is a negative space inside of my green square. So the negative space is like the space around the actual object. So right now this green space is working as, or functioning as our object, and now I've created this negative space. What I'm going to do now is going to take my green tool back out, make my utensil a little smaller, and I'm going to recreate this negative space I just made. Ooh, that was a little too thick here. I'm going to try and recreate that negative space with positive space. It might take a couple tries. That's okay. And once you feel like you've got the shape drawn pretty well, I would increase your tool size so you can fill in the entire shape. You're going to repeat the same process, so turning on your eraser, and you're going to draw some sort of negative space shape into the bottom or each edge of this green square, or whatever color square you have. And then you're going to recreate this negative space right here, down here. And then again, when you feel like you've got the shape of them done well, then you increase your size of pencil and fill in the positive spaces. All right, and then at the very end, you notice that I cleaned up some of my edges, tried to make them as neat as possible. So right now you should start kind of seeing almost like it's a little mirror image of the negative space, you recreating it in the positive space outside of that box. So you're going to do the last and final edge with the same process, removing some negative space and then recreating the shape of that negative space with new positive space. All right, so far we've got our first part of space complete. We've done the positive and negative space activity. If you'll scroll down to your second page, or if you have enough space on this first page, you can keep working down here. I'm going to change my color just for the fun of it. And I'm going to make a new box. This one is our second part of space, and we're going to call it depth. All right, for this first one, or the second one, in depth we are going to use a landscape as an example of things that are far away and closer to us. So first we're going to pick, and I like the blue color just because it already has like a light medium, a light medium and a dark blue color. So what I'm going to start with is this lighter blue, and I'm going to draw some mountains, and I'll fill all that in. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to label this as our background. The next part we're going to do is called our middle ground. So I'm going to grab my pencil tool again, and I'm going to select the slightly darker blue. And this time I'm going to make like some hills that are a little bit closer to us than some mountains. And we'll make a line over here to our label for middle ground. All right, our last part of our landscape to show depth is we're going to use some trees that are really close to us, so they're pretty big. And we'll put those up front, so that means they're at the bottom. So I'm going to select my darkest blue, and I'm going to make some trees. If you go outside of the box, it's okay, because we can always fix that later. All right, to clean this up, what you can do is take your eraser. I'm going to make that a little smaller. And if you draw your straight line, hold it, it should create that straight line again for you. If you hold it where it is, I'll do that on the vertical as well. You can erase away any parts that you may have kind of colored outside of your box just to make it look nice and neat. Here we go. And we're going to label our last layer of space to show that depth. Ooh, that was a huge line. Let me try again. And this last one is called our foreground. So the first two are kind of easy to remember. Things in the back are called the background. Things in the middle are the middle ground. The one thing that's a little harder to remember is the foreground, but just kind of think of it as it's forward. So it's close to you, it's in the front, F and as for front. So there we go, we've got our notes for space. We've done positive and negative space, and then we've also talked about depth, so showing the distance of something in a large space.